Want to be national, you do need to, or to be president, or one of those executive positions, you do need to be a national member. And this is a very fun job. I am very proud, as I said, of my chapter. The next thing that I want to do before I introduce our speaker is just remind folks to set your phasers to stunned so that we do not interrupt. Today I have the pleasure and honor of welcoming Jay Spire to our chapter to speak. Before I go into his formal introduction, I will say Jay has a wonderful sense of humor, and he has put up with quite a bit of heckling from the chapter president this week on Facebook. But Jay is the owner of a company called Legacy Road Communications. He's been a speaker, a writer, and an educator for over 30 years. On the business side of his Legacy Road, Jay works with companies to provide training in email, body language, cross-cultural communications, and also presentation skills for employees. On the personal side of Jay's Road, Jay helps folks to tell their stories so that they can be preserved for the generations to come. Having written books, short stories, screenplays, essays, and articles, he has conducted many writing workshops and has been published in numerous magazines, newspapers, and anthologies. Jay is the author of 3 books, which we have here today: The Stories of Our Days, Cat Got Your Thumb, and Cat Got Your Treadmill? And the story system, the guide to the methodical memoir. Now, I've read 2 of his books, and I feel like I know his cat at this point. But anyway, but they're good. It's great practical reading for you all. Jay is the immediate past president of the NSA Pittsburgh chapter, and he's also a member of the National Society of Newspaper Columnists and the Western Pennsylvania Genealogical Society. Please welcome Jay Spire.
You have cheat sheets on the table for you, so it looks pretty much like this. I'm the low-tech speaker. Okay, I go with things I put on boards like this. So it's non-electronic and 3D. How many of you like to begin your presentation by asking the audience a question that requires a show of hands? Hands? See what I did there? I actually included in the premise of the questions something that I asked them to do. Colleen's not impressed, is she? Tough problem. That is an example of self-referential irony. Oh, good. We're only going to understand every third word he said. Well, that's as technical as I'm going to get as far as writing and communication is concerned. This irony, that can be sort of a tricky area, but communication is something we're all accustomed to doing anyway. And as you can see in the handouts, we're going to be covering a number of different facets of it. And the first part is a little bit, not academic, but it's less nuts and bolts than the other things we're going to be getting involved with today. If you see the cover of the handout, you've got René Magritte's famous work. The caption says, "Ceci n'est pas une pipe." That means this is not a pipe. Now, some people think that's the title. It isn't. The title is La Trahison des Images, which means the treachery of images, or however you say it in Belgian accent and French. I agree with Belgian. The treachery of images. He was saying this is not a pipe, it's a picture of a pipe. He was separating the object from its designation. being speakers, we need to do that all the time because we're often talking about concrete objects, concrete things. And we're putting them into words, and the words represent the concepts we're talking about. But since we're going to be talking about writing for both the page and the stage, we have to realize that words on a page are another generation, another degree of separation from reality. The actual physical pipe, if I were holding a full bent briar in my hand, you would have the object. If I say pipe, that is a spoken representation of the object. The marks on the page are a phonetic representation of the sounds I just made. So we've got those 2 degrees of separation. Now, I advise you, don't think about that. That way, madness lies. What you do need to think about is the fact that the audience is so accustomed to making that translation from physical concept to spoken word that for all intents and purposes, your words become the thing. They have to believe the pipe. They have to believe this is a pipe. They have to believe your words are the essence of what they're supposed to get inside their heads. I know that puts a lot of pressure on us because we have to frame our presentations in such a way that, okay, the audience is going to get this. And the audience is not going to think about the separation. Now, take a look at the first page of the handout. I'm sorry, the second page. Let's actually open it up. The disconnect between object, spoken word, and written word. Now, where we have pipe equals what looks like P-A-I-P, that AI section is the International Phonetic Alphabet. That's how pipe is rendered in the IPA, the International Phonetic Alphabet. In that alphabet, every sound, every morpheme has a symbol. So theoretically, if you know the IPA, you can sound out any word and know exactly how it's pronounced. But there are an awful lot of symbols to learn in the IPA. I do not know all of them. But physical pipe, spoken word pipe, and the written word pipe. 3 different things. Did you know that all writing was originally meant to be read out loud? All writing was originally meant to be read out loud. They were in the form of hymns, sermons, lyric poetry. Quite often, they had this tradition of oral storytelling.
Right.
What was the first story that was written down that we know of?
Cavemen going after antelope.
Okay, you're getting ahead of me.
Oh,
So you're thinking in pictures. Oh, good.
And then type of writing.
That's actually thinking of picture writing, which are ideograms, which are kind of like hieroglyphics.
Right.
And that's where Chinese script comes from. I was thinking of Beowulf.
Oh, really?
Beowulf is the first oral tradition story that someone finally decided to write down in what's called Old English, which is really old English. It's almost unreadable by today's standards. Even the translation is unreadable by today's standards. If you translate it into standard English, it's not your standard storytelling. Someone rides up on a horse and makes a speech for 12 pages. Okay, that's not the standard way to tell a story. We're going to be getting into the standard way of telling a story, so your audience is drawn in. We're going to get to that today. But I'm glad you mentioned the pictures. We have been speaking, how many years would you say that as a species we've been speaking?
Oh, millions.
30,000.
That's all?
We've been speaking as a species for 30,000 years. We've been using spoken language.
Wow, 30, that's all?
Yes.
We just did
Everyone-
about pointing before then?
Pardon me?
We just did about pointing before then?
We actually did, but here's the thing. They made some discoveries about Neanderthal man. We are not descended from Neanderthals. We are Cro-Magnon man. You've heard of Cro-Magnons? They lived about 30 to 40,000 years ago. They had all the local equipment for standard speech. Turns out Neanderthals had language too. There's this negative concept of Neanderthals as being just one step above apes. But it turns out they had the powers of speech also, but their vocal apparatus was different. The larynx was lower, so they couldn't make the same vowel sounds that we can. But it turns out they did have spoken speech. That's why everybody in this room, you could be from the greatest generation, you could be a boomer, you could be Gen X, Gen Y, a millennial, a zygote. You're still, we're all the same generation because we've all been speaking for 1,000 generations. That's why we're such good storytellers. Now, Cro-Magnon man, whatever happened to him? Well, he's us. We're Cro-Magnon man. We're Cro-Magnons. You take a Cro-Magnon from 20,000 years ago, put him in a hard rock t-shirt, relaxed fit jeans, put him on a riding lawnmower, you couldn't tell him from here. Okay, he's us. We're Cro-Magnons. Who did the cave paintings? Who created the cave paintings? We did. That was us. About 15 or 20,000 years ago. We had speech. We didn't have writing. How long do you figure we've been writing? You said it.
6,000?
5,000 or 6,000 years. We've only been writing for that long. And some of that was hieroglyphics, some of that was picture writing. Picture writing is okay. The Chinese have been doing it for thousands and thousands of years. They've got it pretty well nailed down. But they don't have the same kind of syntax that we do. They don't speak the same way. In fact, if you, in English, you might say, well, that tree has very big leaves. You say that in English, subject, verb, predicate. In Chinese, we would say, that tree, leaves very big. So you would have, there are verbs in Chinese. If I were to say, 我是老师, that is, I'm a teacher. 我是老师, that's standard Mandarin. But they have a different way of doing things. The pictures have become very, very stylized over the years. We went the alphabet route, where we have individual letters representing certain sounds. Now, without going into too great a detail, do you ever wonder about the TH sound? How does a T and an H, how do we get from that? Well, that's because we are taking a Roman alphabet and shoehorning it into a Germanic language. English is a Germanic language with Romance borrowings. There is an actual symbol for TH in the runic alphabet and the older alphabet, but there was no TH sound in Latin. There was no or in Latin. So they had to take a couple letters, put them together, and make that represent the TH sound. So that's how we sort of get to where we are. That's why English is a little bit difficult to spell sometimes. Bow and all that stuff that we were talking about before. But English is an extremely expressive language. we have the ability to use nuances of language that other languages do. They have different words, different words for the same concepts, but we have a plethora of that word, plethora. It's got that TH sound. For instance, if I ask you, if I just happen to notice that, oh, that's a nice watch you have.
There you go, Jack.
Oh, what time do you have?
9:30.
Okay. What did I do to get that information? What verb did I
It is.
ask? I just asked what time it was. But if I say something like, oh, that's a interesting watch, where'd you get it?
My wife.
Okay. Now I just sort of ratcheted up the intensity a little bit. Instead of ask, I question. I can ratchet it up even further. And I can say, that watch looks a lot like the one I lost. Where were you on March 15th? Now, ratcheting up that much more, what am I doing now?
Accusing.
Interrogating. I'm still asking, but, and guess what? Interrogate comes from the Latin word rogare, meaning ask. That all comes back. So we do have the shades of meaning. It's called shades of meaning. And we get to do that in English. We have all these words at our disposal. Let's use them. How many words in the English language? Anybody? 10,000?
There's a new one every day.
There's a new one every day? Yeah, well, let's not go there. Pardon?
I think it's a plus.
There's a more than that.
Two plethora?
Pardon?
Two plethora?
There are two plethora. Here's a comparison. French has about 110,000 words. German has 180,000, most of them verbs. German's a very active language. Trust me. English, the Oxford English Dictionary has cataloged 500,000 words. 500,000 words. Oh, my word, yes. Well said. Now, of those 500,000 words, do we really need to be making up new words like mompreneur?
Well, maybe so, because it's a living language.
It is a living language. Living languages do change.
Yes.
You don't hear many new Latin words coming out.
No.
Because Latin is a dead language. A dead language means that no one is born and is taught that as their mother tongue. That's how you know a language is dead. The most recent dead language is Manx, over in one of the Orkney Islands. The last original speaker of Manx passed away, M-A-N-X, a few years ago. So we do have, but we have these words, and we have these concepts. And that's what we're going to be going into today. We're going to be going into how to use these words, how to shape our concepts, and sort of get the most out of the language we have and bring the audience towards, bring the audience in so they have the same knowledge that we do. And I will be entertaining questions toward the end. Just so you know about that. So the cave paintings, we got to that. You know who did the cave paintings? We did. By the way, those cave paintings, have you seen pictures of those? They are very sophisticated. Sophisticated use of color, shading, perspective. There's some argument as to what they were for, whether they were always about the hunt, and always about a successful hunt. So some think it's sort of a documentation, some think it's a talisman. That they were drawing a successful hunt so they would have a successful hunt. so they would have meat through the winter. Those are two of the possibilities. Go ahead and Google Lascaux or Altamira. Altamira is in Spain, Lascaux is in France. Those are where the caves are, where they found a lot of the paintings. Or just Google cave paintings. You'll get there. You'll see how sophisticated they are.
That was a new word you just used.
Which?
When did Google become a verb? About 5 years ago.
I decreed that it was a verb just about 6 months ago. So, no, you can always use it as a verb. But you do have to capitalize it. And put the little T in symbol. It is a trademark. So how do we get the audience to believe the pipe? Well, first thing to do is choose your rules. We have a whole list of things you always heard about that you should and shouldn't do. What's the language, what is correct, what is incorrect? Well, what's correct and incorrect is actually kind of situational. This is not all black and white. It depends on the situation, depends on whom you're writing for, depends on who you're talking to. Notice the preposition I use, who you're talking to. I didn't say to whom you're talking. That just gets kind of stilted. We know that rule about not ending a sentence with a preposition. In fact, that's actually something up about which I can't get worked. That rule was made up by a grammarian named Robert Louth, L-O-W-T-H. He was a 16th, 17th century clergyman and grammarian. Now, they had plenty of clergymen back then, but the grammarians were few and far between, so you could pretty much make up your own rules about English. He was a big fan of Latin, and he figured if you couldn't do it in Latin, you shouldn't do it in English.
And that's where that rule came from? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we have him to blame for that. And because teachers like rules so much, we just like to drill it into the students. You've heard about the split infinitive problem. He's the one who said you should not split an infinitive. Like an infinitive, to laugh. To laugh. Those are the two parts of the infinitive. He said you shouldn't put anything in between to and laugh. How about understand? To truly understand or to understand truly? How about to love? To truly love or to love truly? Depends on where you want to put the emphasis. I have no problem with splitting an infinitive. I'm not saying go out and split infinitives willy-nilly. Right? Willy-nilly is not a willy-nilly is an adjective. It's hyphenated. You split infinitives in a calculated way. Yes, you can split an infinitive. The question you have to answer is it clear? Will people get your meaning? Yes, you can split an infinitive because you're saying something different if you're saying to truly love, you're putting the emphasis on love, to truly love. But if you say to love truly, you're putting the emphasis on truly. The emphasis is always on the final word. So decide what word you want to punch, and that'll help your decision. Do you actually think that an audience is going to sit there, and if you say to love truly, or to truly love, do you think if you say to truly love, they're going to go, oh, you split it in infinite? No. They better be caught up in what you're saying. They better not even notice the mechanics. Because you are speaking in a conversational way. We're going to be talking about writing for the page and writing for the stage. You do not write the same way for the page that you do for up here. You don't talk the same way on paper that you do to living, breathing human beings. Why not? Why can't we use just the same language on the page as we use up here? Yes?
On the page, you describe the mannerism in which the spoken word is being presented. He stood tall. His face was solid. It was only his jaw that dropped before he spoke. Whereas you're not going to stand up and say, I'm standing tall, my face is solid. You know, so you have a lot of description on how the words are being presented. Whereas when you're on stage, you're presenting it in those words that you wrote.
Exactly. That's what we're going to be getting to later on. Because if you have words on the page, you got to put everything in the words. But if you're speaking, you got you. That's one of your tools. You got the body language, you got the tone of voice, and the words. So yes, we're going to get. I was jumping ahead. I just get so excited. Let's go over the list. We will take some time with this because these are all things that I have seen come across my desk in emails, or I have heard people say, or they have asked me about. People ask me stuff all the time about what's correct. That preposition. Let's look at some of the examples we have here. What are you up to?